Book 23, entitled Ascent to the Palace of the Tushita Heaven, describes in great detail the arrays of ornaments set out to welcome Buddha to this heaven. This is on a vaster scale than the other heavens which Buddha visits in this scripture, because the Tushita Heaven, the heaven of happiness or satisfaction, represents the abode of a Buddha-to-be just before manifesting complete enlightenment in the world. The assembly of enlightening beings there is also depicted in terms of the practices and qualities that developed them. After this is an elaborate description of the spiritual qualities of Buddha. Book 23, Ascent to the Palace of the Tushita Heaven. Then, by the spiritual power of the Buddha, in each continent Jambu of every world in the 10 directions was seen the Buddha sitting under a tree, at each of which were enlightening beings imbued with spiritual power from the Buddha expounding the teaching, each thinking themselves to be always face to face with the Buddha. At that time the Buddha, again by spiritual power, went to the palace adorned by all exquisite jewels in the Tushita Heaven of satisfaction and happiness, yet without leaving the foot of the enlightenment tree in the palace of the Suyama Heaven on the peak of Mount Sumeru. The celestial king of the Tushita Heaven, seeing from afar the Buddha's advent, set up a jewel-mine lion seat in the palace. That lion throne was made of a collection of celestial jewels obtained from roots of goodness cultivated in the past, made manifest by the spiritual powers of all Buddhas, born of countless hundreds of thousands of millions of billions of roots of goodness, created by the pure teachings of all enlightened ones, adorned by the power of infinite virtue. Resulting from pure actions, it was indestructible, endlessly delightful to all beholders. Its transcendental qualities were not influenced by the world. Though all sentient beings come to gaze on it, none could exhaustively fathom its glories. There were 100 trillion tears all around it, with 100 trillion gold webs, 100 trillion flower curtains, 100 trillion jewel curtains, 100 trillion garland curtains, and 100 trillion incense curtains hung above it. Garlands of flowers hung down, their scent perfuming everywhere. 100 trillion canopies of flowers, 100 trillion canopies of garlands, and 100 trillion canopies of jewels were held by various celestial beings arrayed in rows on all 4 sides. 100 trillion precious robes were spread on it. 100 trillion balconies radiantly adorned it, with 100 trillion nets of pearls and 100 trillion nets of jewels covering above, while 100 trillion nets of necklaces hung down on all 4 sides. 100 trillion nets of ornaments, 100 trillion nets of canopies, 100 trillion nets of robes, and 100 trillion nets of jewel tapestries were hung above. 100 trillion nets of jewel lotuses in full bloom with glorious light, 100 trillion nets of incense with exquisite fragrance delighting everyone, 100 trillion curtains of jewel chimes moving gently producing harmonious, elegant sounds, 100 trillion curtains of precious sandalwood, its fragrance perfuming the air, 100 trillion curtains of precious flowers in full bloom, 100 trillion curtains of raiment of various subtle hues, rare in the world, 100 trillion curtains showing enlightening beings, 100 trillion multicolored curtains, 100 trillion gold curtains, 100 trillion lapis lazuli curtains, and 100 trillion curtains of various jewels were all hung above. 100 trillion curtains of all jewels adorned by huge wish-fulfilling gems, and 100 trillion flowers of exquisite jewels surrounded in glorious arrays. 100 trillion reflecting hangings of superb beauty were placed at intervals. 100 trillion garlands of jewels and 100 trillion garlands of fragrances hung down on all 4 sides. 100 trillion celestial fragrant resins perfumed everywhere. 100 trillion ornaments of celestial decorations, 100 trillion ornaments of jewel flowers, 100 trillion ornaments of jewels from the finest mines, 100 trillion ornaments of wish-fulfilling jewels, and 100 trillion ornaments of wish-fulfilling pearls from the ocean adorned the body of the throne. 100 trillion embroidered tapestries of exquisite jewels trailed down like streamers, 100 trillion cosmic nets of diamonds, 100 trillion wish-fulfilling jewels, and 100 trillion beautiful gold treasure troves were placed at intervals as embellishments. 100 trillion luminous jewels and 100 trillion sapphires blazing with light, and 100 trillion indestructible celestial gems formed the windows. 100 trillion jewels of pure qualities, giving forth sublime colors, and 100 trillion jewels from pure beautiful mines formed the doorways. 100 trillion crescent jewels, finest in the world, 100 trillion Mind King wish-fulfilling jewels, 100 trillion rose gold jewels, 100 trillion jewels from pure troves, and 100 trillion jewels symbolic of sovereignty, all radiating light, covered the top. 100 trillion jewels set in pure silver, and 100 trillion jewels emblematic of the polar mountain adorned its lotus blossom bank. 100 trillion pearl ornaments, 100 trillion lapis lazuli ornaments, 100 trillion ruby ornaments, 100 trillion wish-fulfilling ornaments, 100 trillion ornaments of jewel lights, 100 trillion ornaments of jewels of various mines, 100 trillion red pearls extremely pleasing to the sight, 100 trillion ornaments of jewels from treasuries of boundless colors and forms, 100 trillion ornaments of incomparable jewels of extreme purity, and 100 trillion ornaments of jewels of superlative brilliance were hung all around as adornments. 100 trillion unusually beautiful decorations made of jewels, 100 trillion jewels in the exquisite forms of celestial beings, 100 trillion subtle perfumes from the 10 directions, 100 trillion black sandalwood incenses, 100 trillion fragrances from inconceivable realms, 100 trillion most excellent scents, and 100 trillion extremely pleasing incenses all emitted fragrant airs, perfuming the 10 directions. 100 trillion special incenses were scattered in all 10 directions. 100 trillion scents of pure light perfumed sentient beings. 100 trillion incenses of boundless various colors perfumed all the Buddha lands, never fading away. 100 trillion perfumes, 100 trillion scents, 100 trillion burning incenses perfumed everything. 100 trillion aloe perfumes from lotus blossom banks producing great sound. 100 trillion wafting fragrances with the power to transform the minds of sentient beings. And 100 trillion perfumes with the power to enlighten pervaded everywhere, causing all the senses of those who noticed them to become dispassionate and tranquil. There were also 100 trillion various arrays of peerless perfumes, kings among fragrances. There reigned 100 trillion clouds of celestial flowers, 100 trillion clouds of celestial perfumes, 100 trillion clouds of heavenly incense powders, 100 trillion clouds of celestial blue lotuses, 100 trillion clouds of celestial red lotuses, 100 trillion clouds of heavenly white lotuses, 100 trillion clouds of heavenly mandarava flowers, 100 trillion clouds of all kinds of celestial flowers, 100 trillion clouds of celestial garments, 100 trillion clouds of jewels, 100 trillion clouds of celestial canopies, 100 trillion clouds of celestial banners, 100 trillion clouds of celestial crowns, 100 trillion clouds of celestial ornaments, 100 trillion clouds of celestial garlands, 100 trillion clouds of necklaces of heavenly jewels, 100 trillion clouds of celestial sandalwood incense, and 100 trillion clouds of celestial aloe incense. There were set up 100 trillion jewel banners. There were hung 100 trillion jewel pennants. There were draped 100 trillion jewel streamers. There were lit 100 trillion incense braziers. There were spread 100 trillion jewel garlands. There were held 100 trillion jewel fans. There were taken up 100 trillion gold whisks. There were draped 100 trillion nets of jewel chimes producing exquisite sounds when stirred by the breeze. 100 trillion jewel balustrades surrounded the throne. 100 trillion jewel palm trees were arrayed in rows. 100 trillion windows framed with gorgeous gems made magnificent adornments. 100 trillion jewel trees provided shade all around. 100 trillion jewel turrets adorned north to south and east to west. 100 trillion jeweled doorways were draped with garlands. 100 trillion golden chimes produced sublime music. 100 trillion ornaments in the form of auspicious symbols were draped in splendid arrays. There were 100 trillion jewel talismans able to get rid of all evils. 100 trillion gold treasuries woven of golden thread. 100 trillion jewel umbrellas with handles of precious elements held in rows. And 100 trillion nets of all kinds of precious ornaments arrayed at intervals. 100 trillion luminous jewels radiated various kinds of light. 100 trillion light beams illumined everywhere. There were 100 trillion sun treasury orbs and 100 trillion moon treasury orbs, all made of collections of jewels of infinite colors. 100 trillion fragrant flames shone with crystal clear light. 100 trillion banks of lotuses burst into glorious bloom. 100 trillion nets of jewels, 100 trillion nets of flowers, and 100 trillion nets of incenses covered above. 100 trillion jewel robes, 100 trillion sapphire robes, 100 trillion celestial yellow robes, 100 trillion celestial red robes, 100 trillion celestial robes of unusual colors, 100 trillion extraordinary celestial robes of various precious substances, 100 trillion various perfumed robes, 100 trillion robes made of all precious substances, and 100 trillion pure white robes were all carefully spread, delightful to all observers. 100 trillion banners of celestial chimes and 100 trillion banners of golden mesh produced subtle tones. There were 100 trillion banners of heavenly embroideries containing all colors. 100 trillion fragrant banners were draped with webs of perfume. 100 trillion flower banners showered all kinds of flowers. 100 trillion banners of raiment trailed exquisite robes. There were 100 trillion celestial jewel banners studded with all sorts of gems. 100 trillion celestial ornament banners decorated with all manner of embellishments. 100 trillion celestial garland banners, garlands of various kinds of flowers arrayed on four sides. 100 trillion celestial canopy banners with jewel bells harmoniously ringing, pleasing all hearers. There were 100 trillion celestial conches producing wonderful sounds. 100 trillion celestial bass drums producing great booms. 100 trillion celestial pipes producing subtle sounds. 100 trillion celestial drums producing loud, beautiful sounds. 100 trillion orchestras playing all at once. 100 trillion independent celestial musicians producing sublime sounds filling all Buddhalands. 100 trillion celestial magical music sounding like echoes, responding to all things. 100 trillion celestial drums producing wonderful sounds when struck. 100 trillion kinds of miraculous celestial music which produced spontaneous harmony. and 100 trillion various celestial assemblies producing wonderful music extinguishing all afflictions. 100 trillion pleasing sounds sang praises of giving offerings. 100 trillion far-reaching sounds sang praises of service. 100 trillion extremely deep sounds sang praises of practical application. 100 trillion sounds of myriad subtleties sang praises of the fruits of the Buddha's deeds. 100 trillion delicate sounds sang praises of principles in accord with reality. 100 trillion unimpeded sounds of truth sang praises of Buddha's past practices. 100 trillion pure sounds sang praises of past offerings to the Buddhas. 100 trillion sounds of teaching sang praises of the supreme fearlessness of the Buddhas. 100 trillion infinite sounds sang praises of the infinity of enlightening beings' virtues. 100 trillion sounds of myriad subtleties sang praises of the fruits of the Buddha's deeds. 100 trillion delicate sounds sang praises of principles in accord with reality. 100 trillion unimpeded sounds of truth sang praises of Buddha's past practices. 100 trillion pure sounds sang praises of past offerings to the Buddhas. 100 trillion sounds of teaching sang praises of the supreme fearlessness of the Buddhas. 100 trillion infinite sounds sang praises of the infinity of enlightening beings' virtues. 100 trillion sounds of the stages of enlightening beings sang praises of revealing the practices appropriate to all the stages of enlightening. 100 trillion uninterrupted sounds sang praises of the endlessness of the Buddha's virtues. 100 trillion conformative sounds sang praises of practices by which Buddha is seen. 100 trillion sounds of extremely profound teaching sang praises of principles corresponding to unhindered knowledge of all things. 100 trillion great sounds filled all Buddha lands. 100 trillion sounds of unimpeded purity caused all to rejoice in accord with their inclinations. 100 trillion sounds of non-dwelling in the triple world caused all hearers to enter deeply into the nature of reality. 100 trillion sounds of joy caused the minds of all hearers to be unobstructed, with deep faith and respect. 100 trillion sounds of the realm of Buddhahood revealed the meanings of all things. 100 trillion sounds of concentration formulae expounded the distinctions of all doctrines, definitively comprehending the esoteric treasury of the enlightened ones. 100 trillion sounds of all truths, gentle and pleasant, harmonized all the music. There were 100 trillion newly inspired enlightening beings who, as soon as they saw this throne, doubly increased their determination for omniscience. 100 trillion enlightening beings preparing the ground, their minds pure and joyful. 100 trillion practicing enlightening beings, their understanding pure and clear. 100 trillion nobly born enlightening beings, abiding in supreme zeal. 100 trillion enlightening beings equipped with skill and means, activating the great vehicle. 100 trillion enlightening beings in the abode of right mindfulness, diligently cultivating the path of all enlightening beings. 100 trillion non-regressing enlightening beings, purifying all stages of enlightenment. 100 trillion enlightening beings of youthful nature, attaining the light of concentration of all enlightening beings. 100 trillion prince of teaching enlightening beings, entering the inconceivable sphere of all Buddhas. 100 trillion coronated enlightening beings, able to manifest the 10 powers of infinite enlightened ones. 100 trillion enlightening beings with mastery of spiritual powers. 100 trillion enlightening beings with pure understanding. 100 trillion enlightening beings with determined minds. 100 trillion enlightening beings with profound, unbreakable faith. 100 trillion enlightening beings expounding the meanings of the teachings, causing knowledge to be sure. 100 trillion enlightening beings with undisturbed, correct recollection. 100 trillion enlightening beings of certain knowledge. 100 trillion enlightening beings with the power to retain what they hear, holding all the Buddha teachings. 100 trillion enlightening beings producing infinitely vast, great awareness and understanding. 100 trillion enlightening beings abiding in the faculty of faith. 100 trillion enlightening beings who had attained transcendent self-control and fully kept all the moral precepts. 100 trillion enlightening beings who had attained transcendent generosity and were able to give everything. 100 trillion enlightening beings who had attained transcendent forbearance, whose minds did not wander, and who were able to accept all the Buddha teachings. 100 trillion enlightening beings who had attained transcendent vigor and were capable of carrying out infinite efforts for emancipation. 100 trillion enlightening beings who had attained transcendent meditation and were imbued with the shining light of infinite meditations. 100 trillion enlightening beings who had attained transcendent wisdom, the light of their wisdom able to illumine everywhere. 100 trillion enlightening beings who had perfected great vows, all pure. 100 trillion enlightening beings who had attained the lamp of knowledge, clearly illumining the teachings. 100 trillion enlightening beings illuminated by the light of truth of the Buddhas of the 10 directions. 100 trillion enlightening beings expounding the way to get rid of folly throughout the 10 directions. 100 trillion enlightening beings who entered the fields of all Buddhas. 100 trillion enlightening beings whose body of reality reached all Buddha lands. 100 trillion enlightening beings who had attained the voice of Buddhas and were capable of enlightening many. 100 trillion enlightening beings who had attained the means of producing all knowledge. 100 trillion enlightening beings who had accomplished all aspects of the teaching. 100 trillion enlightening beings who had attained true knowledge, like jewel banners, able to make plain all Buddha teachings. And 100 trillion enlightening beings able to fully reveal the realm of enlightenment. 100 trillion celestial kings of the various heavens prostrated themselves reverently. 100 trillion Naga kings gazed fixedly. 100 trillion Yaksha kings joined their palms above their heads. 100 trillion Gandharva kings developed pure minds of faith. 100 trillion Titan kings cut off their pride. 100 trillion Garuda kings held streamers in their mouths. 100 trillion Kanara kings danced joyfully. 100 trillion Maharaga kings gazed with delight. 100 trillion world leaders bowed with respect. 100 trillion kings of the heavens of 33 celestial realms gazed unblinking. 100 trillion kings of the Siyama heavens joyfully sang praises. 100 trillion kings of Tushita heavens prostrated their bodies. 100 trillion kings of the heavens of enjoyment of emanations bowed their heads to the ground in respect. 100 trillion kings of the heavens of command of others' emanations joined their palms reverently. 100 trillion kings of the Brahma heavens watched single-mindedly. 100 trillion celestial kings of great power reverently made offerings. 100 trillion enlightening beings sang eulogies aloud. 100 trillion goddesses single-mindedly made offerings. 100 trillion deities with the same aspirations danced with joy. 100 trillion deities who had lived in the same place in antiquity sang hymns of praise with beautiful voices. 100 trillion Brahma body deities prostrated themselves in respect. 100 trillion Brahma assistant deities joined their palms at their crowns. 100 trillion Brahma group deities circled around as guardian attendants. 100 trillion great Brahma deities sang eulogies of infinite virtues. 100 trillion deities of the heavens of light threw themselves on the ground. 100 trillion deities of the heavens of little light sang eulogies of the difficulty of meeting with an age when a Buddha is in the world. 100 trillion deities of the heavens of infinite light bowed to the Buddha from afar. 100 trillion deities of the heavens of light sound sang of the rarity of getting to see a Buddha. 100 trillion deities of the heavens of purity came here along with their mansions. 100 trillion deities of the heavens of minor purity bowed their heads with pure hearts. 100 trillion deities of the heavens of infinite purity descended, wishing to see the Buddha. 100 trillion deities of the heavens of universal purity approached with reverence and respect and made offerings. 100 trillion deities of the heavens of vastness reflected on past roots of goodness. 100 trillion deities of the heavens of minor vastness contemplated the rarity of the enlightened. 100 trillion deities of the heavens of infinite vastness with sure respect initiated all good actions. 100 trillion deities of the heavens of vast results bowed reverently. 100 trillion deities of the heavens of no troubles bowed respectfully, their faith firm and enduring. 100 trillion deities of the heavens of no heat joined their palms and remembranced the Buddha tirelessly. 100 trillion deities of the heavens of good sight bowed their heads to the ground. 100 trillion deities of the heavens of good manifestation meditated constantly on honoring and serving the Buddhas. 100 trillion deities of the heaven of the ultimate of form bowed reverently. 100 trillion deities of various heavens sang praises with great joy. 100 trillion deities each carefully considered and made adornments. 100 trillion enlightening deities guarded the Buddha's throne, ceaselessly embellishing it. 100 trillion flower-bearing enlightening beings showered all kinds of flowers. 100 trillion incense-bearing enlightening beings showered all kinds of fragrances. 100 trillion garland-bearing enlightening beings showered all kinds of garlands. 100 trillion enlightening beings bearing powdered incense showered all kinds of powdered incenses. 100 trillion perfume-bearing enlightening beings showered all kinds of perfumes. 100 trillion raiment-bearing enlightening beings showered all kinds of raiment. 100 trillion parasol-bearing enlightening beings showered all kinds of parasols. 100 trillion banner-bearing deities showered all kinds of banners. 100 trillion pennant-bearing enlightening beings showered all kinds of pennants. 100 trillion gem-bearing enlightening beings showered all kinds of jewels. 100 trillion ornament-bearing enlightening beings showered all kinds of ornaments. 100 trillion godlings came forth from their celestial palaces to the sight of the throne. 100 trillion godlings with pure faithful minds came with their palaces. 100 trillion nobly born godlings supported the throne with their bodies. 100 trillion consecrated godlings held the throne with their whole bodies. 100 trillion meditating enlightening beings contemplated respectfully. 100 trillion nobly born enlightening beings gave rise to purity of mind. 100 trillion enlightening beings became joyful and blissful in all senses. 100 trillion enlightening beings' profound minds of faith were purified. 100 trillion enlightening beings' faith and resolve were purified. 100 trillion enlightening beings' actions were purified. 100 trillion enlightening beings were enabled to take on birth freely. 100 trillion enlightening beings glowed with the light of truth. 100 trillion enlightening beings consummated the stages of enlightenment. 100 trillion enlightening beings became well able to teach and influence all sentient beings. Born of 100 trillion roots of goodness, protected by 100 trillion Buddhas, perfected by 100 trillion virtues, purified by 100 trillion sublime aspirations, beautified by 100 trillion great vows, produced by 100 trillion good actions, stabilized by 100 trillion virtuous qualities, made manifest by 100 trillion spiritual powers, developed by 100 trillion meritorious achievements, eulogized for 100 trillion praiseworthy qualities. As in the world, the king of the Tushita Heaven reverently set up a throne like this for the enlightened one, So did the kings of the Tushita Heavens in all worlds likewise set up such thrones, with such adornments, with such ceremonies, with such faith, with such purity of mind, with such delight, with such joy, with such respect, with such appreciation of rarity, with such dancing, with such yearning. All were the same. Then the king of the Tushita Heaven, having set up the throne for the Enlightened One, respectfully greeted the Buddha together with countless godlings of the Tushita Heaven. With pure hearts they showered clouds of flowers of innumerable colors, clouds of incenses of inconceivable colors, clouds of garlands of various colors, vast clouds of pure sandalwood, clouds of innumerable various parasols, clouds of fine celestial raiment, clouds of boundless beautiful jewels, clouds of celestial ornaments, clouds of innumerable incenses of all kinds, and clouds of all kinds of sandalwood and aloe. When the godlings each produced these clouds from their bodies, 100 trillion incalculable numbers of godlings of the Tushita Heaven, as well as the other godlings in the assembly, were overjoyed and bowed reverently. Countless goddesses danced with joyful anticipation, gazing at the Enlightened One. In the Tushita Palace, a host of unspeakably many enlightening beings hovered in the air, and with diligence and single-mindedness produced offerings surpassing all the heavens and presented them to the Buddha, bowing respectfully, while countless forms of music played all at once. At this point, because of the great spiritual power of the Buddha, because of the effluence of past roots of goodness, and because of his inconceivable mystic powers, all the gods and goddesses in the Tushita Palace saw the Buddha from afar as though he were right before them. They all had the same thoughts. The appearance of an enlightened one in the world is rarely encountered. Now we are getting to see an omniscient one who has unimpeded true awareness of all things. Thus thinking, thus observing, together with the other groups they all welcomed the Buddha, each heaping celestial robes with all kinds of flowers, fragrances, jewels, ornaments, heavenly sandalwood and aloe incense, celestial jewel incenses, flowers of all heavenly fragrances, and mandarava flowers from all the heavens, and spread them as offerings to the Buddha. Hundreds of trillions of infinities of Tushita deities hovered in the air. All considering the Buddha the realm of wisdom and knowledge, they burnt all kinds of incenses, producing aromatic clouds adorning the sky. Also, thinking of the Buddha with joy, they showered clouds of celestial flowers adorning the sky. Also, thinking of the Buddha with respect, they showered clouds of celestial canopies adorning the sky. Also, desirous of making offerings to the Buddha, they scattered clouds of all kinds of celestial garlands adorning the sky. Also, engendering resolute faith in the Buddha, they cast countless nets of gold through the sky, with chimes of all kinds of jewels continuously producing beautiful tones. Also, considering the Buddha the supreme field of blessings, they adorned the sky with countless drapes and showered clouds of all kinds of jewelry endlessly. Also, conceiving profound faith in the Buddha, they adorned the sky with countless celestial mansions, playing all manner of celestial music, producing subtle melodious tones. Also, considering how rare it is to meet a Buddha, they adorned the sky with clouds of celestial raiment of all kinds of colors, showering various incomparably beautiful robes. Also, their hearts leaping with boundless joy at the Buddha, they adorned the sky with countless celestial jewel crowns, raining countless celestial crowns forming great clouds. Also, conceiving great joy in regarding the Buddha, they adorned the sky with countless jewels of various colors, ceaselessly raining clouds of all kinds of jewelry. Hundreds of trillions of infinities of celestial beings, all conceiving pure faith in the Buddha, scattered countless heavenly flowers of various colors, and burned various celestial incenses as offerings to the Buddha. Also, thinking of the Buddha as a magnificent, miraculous appearance, they brought celestial sandalwood incenses of innumerable various colors and reverently scattered them before the Buddha. Also, their hearts leaping with joy in regarding the Buddha, they followed the Buddha holding countless precious celestial robes of various colors and spread them on the roads as offerings to the Buddha. Also, regarding the Buddha with purity of mind, they greeted the Buddha carrying countless banners of celestial jewels of various colors. Also, conceiving supreme joy at the thought of the Buddha, they brought countless celestial adornments of various colors to present to the Buddha. Also engendering unbreakable faith in the Buddha, they brought countless garlands of celestial jewels to present to the Buddha. Also, incomparably joyful at the thought of the Buddha, they brought countless pennants of celestial jewels of various colors to offer to the Buddha. 100 trillion infinities of celestial beings with tamed, tranquil minds, free from indulgence, brought countless celestial musical instruments of various forms producing sublime tones to present to the Buddha. 100 trillion infinities of enlightening beings already living in the palace of the Tushita Heaven, with offerings surpassing those of all the gods, produced by the teaching transcending the worlds of desire, form, and formlessness, produced by infinitely broad knowledge, developed by steadfast, pure faith, produced by action free from afflictions, produced by the all-pervading, unobstructed mind, produced by the profound principle of adaptable methodology, produced by inconceivable roots of goodness, perfected by countless displays of skill and means, revealed by the will to make offerings to the Buddha, stamped by the teaching of non-creation, made gifts of these offerings to the Buddha. They presented to the Buddha canopies of all precious substances born in the transcendent ways, drapes of all kinds of flowers born of pure understanding of the realm of all Buddhas, all kinds of garments born of acceptance of the non-origination of things, all kinds of nets of chimes born of the unimpeded mind entering into the state of indestructibility, all kinds of solid fragrance born of the mind understanding all things are like apparitions, beautiful thrones of myriad precious substances of all Buddhas, born of the mind omnipresent at the thrones of Buddhas in all realms of enlightenment. Banners of all jewels born of the mind tirelessly make offerings to the Buddhas. Palaces of all jewels dwelt in by the Buddhas, born of the joyful mind that understands that all things are like dreams. Clouds of lotus blossoms of all jewels, born of roots of goodness without attachment and uncreated roots of goodness. Clouds of all solid incenses, clouds of boundless flowers of all colors, clouds of exquisite raiment of all various colors, clouds of infinite pure sandalwood incenses, clouds of precious canopies with all kinds of embellishments, clouds of all burning incenses, clouds of all kinds of beautiful garlands, clouds of all kinds of pure decorations, all filling the cosmos, going beyond all the heavens. Those enlightening beings each produced from their bodies unspeakable hundreds of trillions of infinities of enlightening beings, filling the space of the cosmos, their minds all equal to the Buddhas of all times. By means of development from the delusion-free teaching and strengthening by the power of infinite enlightened ones, they revealed to sentient beings the path of peace. Equipped with unspeakably many meaningful expressions, they entered into the seeds of all concentration formulae containing infinite teachings, and produced inexhaustible treasuries of intellectual powers. Their minds without fear, they conceived great joy, and with unspeakable infinities of points of truthful praise, they tirelessly eulogized the Enlightened One. Then all the celestial beings and all the enlightening beings saw the Buddha, the perfectly enlightened one, the inconceivable hero of humanity, his bodies infinite, uncountable, manifesting inconceivably many different varieties of mystical transfigurations, causing the minds of countless sentient beings to be full of joy, pervading all universes throughout space, adorned with the embellishments of Buddhahood, causing all sentient beings to abide in roots of goodness, displaying infinite spiritual powers of the Buddhas, beyond all manners of speaking, admired and respected by all great enlightening beings, causing them all to rejoice in accord with what they need to be taught, abiding in the immense body of the Buddhas, all virtues and roots of goodness purified, most excellent in appearance, not to be outshone by anyone. The sphere of the Buddha's knowledge was inexhaustible, born of incomparable concentration. His body was boundless, omnipresent in the bodies of all sentient beings. He caused great joy to infinite beings. He caused the lineage of omniscient ones to continue unbroken. Dwelling in the ultimate abode of the Buddhas, born in the family of the Buddhas of past, present, and future, he caused the faith of countless sentient beings to be purified, and caused the knowledge and wisdom of all enlightening beings to be perfected. All his senses were joyful. The clouds of his teaching covered all universes in space, teaching and taming without omission, fulfilling all sentient beings according to their mentalities, causing them to abide in non-discriminatory knowledge. He was beyond all sentient beings. Having attained omniscience, he radiated a great light, causing his roots of goodness of past ages to be clearly manifest. He inspired great determination in everyone, and caused all sentient beings to abide in the indestructible knowledge of universal good. Abiding everywhere in all lands of sentient beings, born of the non-regressing true teaching, he dwelt in the totally impartial realm of reality. Clearly understanding what was appropriate to the minds of sentient beings, he manifested unspeakably many different Buddha bodies, beyond the power of worldly speech to extol, able to cause all to always think of the Buddha filling the cosmos, liberating vast numbers of living beings. According to the aid they required, he bestowed the teaching on them, causing them to be pacified and their faith to be pure, manifesting inconceivable physical forms. Regarding all living beings impartially, his mind had no attachments. He dwelt in the abode of non-obstruction and had attained the 10 powers of Buddhahood without impediment. His mind was always quiet and stable, never distracted or disturbed. Abiding in omniscience, he was able to express all kinds of truths. Able to enter completely into the boundless ocean of knowledge, he produced infinite treasuries of virtue and wisdom. With the sun of enlightenment, he constantly illumined the entire cosmos. In accord with the power of his original vows, he was always manifest, never disappearing, always dwelling in the realm of reality, abiding in the abode of Buddhas without change. He had no attachment to self or to possessions. He dwelt in the transmundane state and was not affected by mundane things. In all worlds he set up the banner of knowledge and wisdom, his knowledge vast and great, transcending the world with no attachments. He rescued sentient beings from the mire, placing them on the highest ground of wisdom. All his blessings and virtues benefited sentient beings, yet were never exhausted. He was fully aware of the knowledge and wisdom of all enlightening beings, their faith and direction certain, sure to attain enlightenment. By great compassion he manifested infinite adornments of the Buddha body. With a wondrous voice he expounded infinite teachings, satisfying sentient beings according to their mentalities. In the past, future, and present his mind was always pure. He caused all sentient beings to be unattached to objects. He constantly forecast the enlightenment of all the enlightening beings, causing them to enter the family of Buddhas to be born in the house of Buddhas and attain the coronation of Buddhas. He always traveled throughout the 10 directions, never resting, never craving for or clinging to anything. Able to live in all Buddha lands in the cosmos, he knew the minds of all sentient beings. All his virtues were unworldly and pure. He did not dwell in birth and death, yet appeared throughout the world like a reflection. He illumined the whole cosmos by the moon of knowledge and realized that everything is ungraspable. By his wisdom, he was constantly aware that all worlds are like illusions, like reflections, like dreams, like magic tricks, that all have mind as their inherent nature. Abiding in this way, he manifested Buddha bodies in accord with the dissimilarities of the actions and consequences of sentient beings, the distinctions in their mental inclinations, and the individual differences in their faculties. The Enlightened One was always relating to countless sentient beings, explaining to them that everything in the world derives from conditional, interdependent origination. He knew that the signs of all things are signless, this being their sole characteristic, the basis of wisdom. He wanted to cause all sentient beings to detach from all signs, forms, and characteristics. He showed clearly all natures and characteristics of the world, thus traversing the world, to reveal to them unexcelled enlightenment, desiring to rescue all sentient beings. He appeared in the world and showed the way of the enlightened. He caused them to perceive the features of the body of the Enlightened One, to concentrate on them and meditate on them, to diligently cultivate and develop themselves to annihilate mundane afflictions, cultivate enlightening practice with unwavering minds, and attain fulfillment of all aspects of the great vehicle, attaining the rewards of the Buddhas. He was able to observe the roots of goodness of sentient beings, and did not allow the results of their pure deeds to die out. His knowledge was clear and complete, entering into all times, forever detached from all mundane discrimination. He radiated networks of light beams, fully illuminating all worlds in the 10 directions. Those who saw him never tired of beholding the sublime refinements of his physical form. By means of great virtue, knowledge, wisdom, and spiritual power, he produced all kinds of enlightening practices. The spheres of his senses were free and complete, round and full. He did Buddha work, and when he finished doing it, he disappeared. He was able to show the path of all knowledge of past, present, and future. For the enlightening beings, he showered a rain of innumerable concentration formulae, causing them to develop great rapture, to take them up, hold them, and practice them, and perfect the virtues of all Buddhas in their full glory, with boundless, wonderful forms to adorn their beings. He saw everything in all worlds, and was forever rid of all obstruction. He had attained the pure, true meaning of all verities. He had attained mastery of virtuous qualities, and was a great king of truth like the sun illumining everywhere. Being a field of blessings for the world, he had great dignity, influence, and virtue. He manifested emanation bodies in all worlds, radiating the light of wisdom, causing all to be enlightened. Wanting to cause all sentient beings to know the boundless virtues possessed by the Buddha, he took the turban of non-obstruction, tied it on his head, and assumed the rank of Buddhahood. Adapting to the world, he guided by means of expedient methods, comforting beings with the hand of wisdom. As a great physician, he skillfully cured all sickness, able to go to all the countless lands in all worlds without rest. His clear, pure eye of wisdom was free from all obstructions, able to clearly see all. Evil-doing sentient beings he tamed in various ways, causing them to enter the path, skillfully seizing appropriate opportunities to civilize and teach them, never ceasing. If sentient beings developed equanimous, impartial minds, he would then show them the consequences of impartial deeds. In accord with their inclinations and in accord with their actions and results thereof, he manifested various spiritual powers of the Buddha body for them, to expound the truth and enlighten them, that they may attain the knowledge and wisdom of the teaching, and that their minds be joyful and their senses ecstatic, that they see innumerable Buddhas, develop profound faith, and produce roots of goodness, never regressing. All sentient beings, in accord with their involvement and entrapment by actions, sleep forever in birth and death. The Enlightened One, appearing in the world, can awaken them all, comfort their minds, and cause them to be without anxiety or fear. Any who see him he causes to realize independent knowledge of truth. With knowledge and skill and means he comprehends the objective world. His embellishing marks and adornments cannot be overshadowed. His mountain of wisdom and talons of teaching are all purified. Sometimes he manifests as an enlightening being. Sometimes he appears as a Buddha, causing all sentient beings to arrive at the realm of sorrowlessness. Adorned by countless virtues, developed by practical action, he appears in the world. The adornment and purity of all Buddhas are accomplished by the works of omniscience. Always keeping his original vow, he does not abandon the world, being a steadfast benefactor of sentient beings. His supreme pure light makes itself visible to all sentient beings. By means of spiritual power, the Buddha always follows the sentient beings of the 6 realms of mundane existence, boundless and countless, never abandoning them. If there are any who have planted similar roots of goodness in the past, he causes them all to be purified, yet without giving up his original vow with regard to all sentient beings of the 6 paths of mundane existence. He deceives no one, appropriately dealing with them in virtuous ways, causing them to practice pure acts and break up demonic conflicts. From the realm of non-obstruction he produces great power. Nothing blocks his supreme treasury of light. He manifests reflections in the realm of pure minds which all worlds see. He bestows many various teachings on sentient beings. Buddha is a boundless treasury of light. His powers, knowledge, and wisdom are all fully complete. He constantly illumines all sentient beings with great light, causing them all to be fulfilled in accordance with their aspirations. Beyond all enmity, he is the highest field of blessings, relied upon by all sentient beings. If any give anything, he causes them to be pure, and to receive boundless blessings from doing a little bit of good. He causes all to be able to enter the stage of inexhaustible knowledge. He is the pure-minded master, planting roots of goodness for all sentient beings. He is the most excellent fertile field, producing blessings and merit for sentient beings. His knowledge and wisdom is exceedingly deep. With skill and means he can rescue all from the pains of the woeful states of greed, anger, and ignorance. Thus believing, thus observing, thus entering the depths of knowledge, thus sporting in the ocean of virtues, thus arriving at space-like wisdom, thus cognizing sentient beings' field of blessings, thus contemplating with presence of mind, thus observing the deeds, marks, and embellishments of Buddha, thus observing the Buddha appearing throughout the world, thus observing the Buddha's mystical power. The great congregation at that time saw each pore of the Buddha's body amid 100 trillion infinities of light beams, each beam of light having countless hues, countless purities, countless radiances, causing countless beings to watch, countless beings to rejoice, countless beings to be happy, countless beings to grow in faith, countless beings' aspiration to be pure, countless beings' senses to be pure and cool, and causing countless beings to develop respect and honor. Then the great assembly all saw the Buddha's body emit 100 trillion infinities of inconceivable great lights, each light with inconceivably many hues and inconceivably many beams illuminating inconceivably many realms of phenomena, by the Buddha's spiritual power producing great subtle sound conveying infinities of eulogies in words transcending all worlds, perfected by transmundane virtues. He also manifested hundreds of trillions of quadrillions of inconceivable numbers of subtle adornments, which could never be fully described even in 100 trillion quadrillion inconceivable numbers of eons, all of them produced by the inexhaustible spiritual power of the Buddha. He also manifested unspeakably many enlightened ones arising in the world and leading sentient beings into the door of wisdom to understand the most profound truth. He also manifested the docetic metamorphoses of the enlightened ones throughout the space of the cosmos, causing all worldly beings to be impartial and purified. All of this sprung from the unhindered omniscience in which the Buddha dwelt. It was also born of the inconceivable superlative virtues which the Buddha cultivated. He also manifested 100 trillion quadrillion inconceivable numbers of beautiful jewel light flames, originating from the good roots of his ancient great vows. He did so because he had presented offerings to and served countless enlightened ones, because he had cultivated pure practices without slacking, because his omniscient mind without impediment produced roots of virtue, in order to reveal the universality of the powers of the enlightened, to cut off the doubts of all sentient beings, to cause all of them to be able to see the enlightened one, to cause infinite sentient beings to abide in virtue, to show the enlightened one's spiritual powers cannot be outshone, to cause all sentient beings to be able to enter into the ocean of the ultimate, to cause the enlightening beings of all Buddha lands to assemble, and because he wanted to reveal the inconceivable teachings of the Buddha. Then the enlightened one, his great compassion covering all, showed the adornments of omniscience, wanting to cause the sentient beings in innumerable worlds who had no faith to have faith, to cause those with faith to develop, to cause the developed to become pure, to cause the pure to become mature, to cause the mature to conquer their minds and contemplate the profound truth, be filled with the boundless light of knowledge and wisdom, develop an immeasurably broad mind, an omniscient mind, never regressing, not going against the essential nature of things, not fearing ultimate reality, to realize genuine truth, fulfill all transcendent practices, purify all transmundane virtues, like universally good, attain the freedom of Buddhahood, leave the realm of demons and enter the realm of Buddhas, comprehend the profound teaching and attain inconceivable knowledge, never regressing from the vows of universal salvation to always see the Buddhas, never abandoning them, to perfect experiential knowledge, realize infinite truths, be filled with the boundless power of the treasury of virtue, develop a joyous mind, enter the realm where there is no doubt, divorce evil and be pure, see things unperturbed due to omniscience, gain entry to the congregations of all enlightening beings, and always be born in the family of the enlightened ones of past, present, and future. These adornments manifested by the Buddha were all made by roots of goodness accumulated in the past, for the purpose of harmonizing and civilizing all sentient beings, to reveal the great powerful virtue of the enlightened, to light up the treasury of unobstructed knowledge and wisdom, to show the extreme radiance of the boundless supreme virtues of the enlightened, to show the inconceivable great spiritual displays of the enlightened, to manifest the Buddha body in all realms of being by means of spiritual powers, to show the boundlessness of the mystic powers and magical transfigurations of the enlightened, to fulfill all his original aspirations, to show that the dauntless knowledge and wisdom of the enlightened can go everywhere, to become the King of Truth free in all ways, to produce all avenues of knowledge, to manifest the purity of the body of the enlightened, and also to reveal the supreme splendor of his body, to manifest the realization of the equal state of the Buddhas of all times, to reveal the pure treasury of roots of goodness, to manifest the most sublime form to which nothing in the world may be likened, to show the characteristics of full command of the 10 powers, to cause beholders never to tire, to be the sun of the world, illumining past, present, and future. All the virtuous qualities of the sovereign King of Truth were manifested by roots of goodness of the past. Even if all enlightening beings were to eulogize and tell of them throughout all time, they never would be exhaustively told. Then the king of the Tushita Heaven, having prepared all the offerings for the Buddha, together with countless deities of the Tushita Heaven, joined his palms in a gesture of respect toward the Buddha and said, "Welcome, world-honored one. Welcome, felicitous one. Welcome, enlightened one. Worthy, truly awakened one. Please look upon us with compassion and sojourn in this place." Then the world-honored one, adorning himself with the adornments of Buddhahood, replete with magnificent virtues, in order to gladden all beings, in order that all enlightening beings develop profound understanding, so that all the celestial beings of the Tushita Heaven increase in determination, so that the king of the Tushita Heaven never tires of generosity and service, so that countless beings focus their attention on the Buddha and become inspired to seek enlightenment, so that countless types of beings see the endlessness of the Buddha's roots of goodness, blessings, and virtues, so that they always be able to arouse pure faith, so that, seeing the Buddha, they serve without seeking anything, so that all of their aspirations be pure, so that they diligently amass roots of goodness without flagging, and so that they would vow to seek omniscience. The Buddha accepted the invitation of the celestial king and entered the palace adorned by all jewels. Just as in this world, the same thing transpired in all worlds in the 10 directions. At that point, the hall adorned by all jewels naturally had wonderfully fine decorations, surpassing all the heavens, and atop the decorations were nets of all jewels covering all over, showering clouds of all the finest gems all over, showering clouds of all kinds of ornaments, clouds of all kinds of precious raiment, clouds of all kinds of sandalwood incenses, clouds of all kinds of solid fragrances, clouds of canopies adorned by all jewels, and clouds of bunches of inconceivably many flowers, producing everywhere inconceivable music praising the enlightened one's knowledge of all means of liberation, all in accord with the sublime truth. All these offerings were beyond those of the celestial beings. Then in the Tushita Palace, rich music and singing continued ceaselessly. By the spiritual power of the Buddha, the mind of the king of Tushita was made imperturbable. His past roots of goodness all reached complete fulfillment. His good qualities became more firm and stable. He increased in pure faith. He aroused great vigor, conceived great joy, purified profound aspiration, made a determination for enlightenment, and placed his unwavering attention on the teaching, keeping it firmly in mind. Then the king of the Tushita Heaven, empowered by the Buddha, recalled the roots of goodness he had planted with past Buddhas and said in verse, "There once was a Buddha, unobstructed moon, most auspicious among the auspicious. He once entered this hall of adornment, therefore this place is most auspicious. There once was a Buddha called Broad Knowledge, most auspicious among the auspicious. He once entered this golden hall, therefore this place is most auspicious. There once was a Buddha called Universal Eye, most auspicious among the auspicious. He once entered this hall of adornment, therefore this place is most auspicious. There once was a Buddha called Coral, most auspicious among the auspicious. He once entered this jewel mine hall, therefore this place is most auspicious. There once was a Buddha, Lion of Philosophy, most auspicious among the auspicious. He once entered this Mountain King hall, therefore this place is most auspicious. There once was a Buddha called Sunlight, most auspicious among the auspicious. He once entered this hall of flowers, therefore this place is most auspicious. There once was a Buddha called Boundless Light, most auspicious among the auspicious. He once entered this tree-adorned hall, therefore this place is most auspicious. There once was a Buddha called Banner of Truth, most auspicious among the auspicious. He once entered this Jewel Palace hall, therefore this place is most auspicious. There once was a Buddha called Lamp of Knowledge, most auspicious among the auspicious. He once entered this fragrant mountain hall, therefore this place is most auspicious. There once was a Buddha called Light of Virtue, most auspicious among the auspicious. He once entered this crystal hall, therefore this place is most auspicious. As in this world the king of the Tushita Heaven, by the power of the Buddha, eulogized Buddhas of the past, so also did the kings of the Tushita Heavens in all worlds praise the virtues of Buddhas. Then the world-honored one sat cross-legged on the jewel treasury lion throne in the hall adorned by all jewels. His body of reality was pure, his inconceivable action was free. He was in the same realm as all Buddhas of all times, abiding in omniscience, entering into the same one essence with all the Buddhas. His enlightened eye was perfectly clear, and he saw all things without hindrance. He had great mystic powers coursing everywhere throughout the cosmos unceasingly. He had great occult powers, able to go anywhere there might be beings who could be taught. His body was adorned with the unobstructed embellishments of all Buddhas. He was well aware of appropriate timing in expounding teachings to people. Unspeakably many enlightening beings came from various lands and other regions and assembled. The congregation was pure, their reality body non-dual. They rested on nothing and were freely able to perform the actions of Buddhas. When the Buddha had sat on this throne, in the hall there spontaneously appeared countless adornments surpassing all the offerings of the celestials. That is, flower garlands, robes, perfumes, incense, jeweled parasols, banners, pennants, music, and singing. Each of these was uncountable. With great reverence and respect these were offered to the Buddha. The same thing took place in all the Tushita Heavens in the 10 directions.